This brings us to Opie and Anthony. And when the broadcast industry was deregulated, there's some people who said, not only are you going to get the kind of music videos you just saw today, and again, you might be walking at that video and saying, gee, I see that kind of stuff on television all the time, and if you go to the right party at Penn State, you might get to see some of that, at the party you're at, depending on what parties you go to. And some people say, parties at Penn State aren't that cool, you got to go to a real place, like a real city, to have something like that go on. Well, if some people were concerned about what might be broadcast through cable, one of the things that cable's always stood on is the theory goes that nobody has to have cable. You don't have to have cable. You don't have to take certain stations, and you can filter out certain things, including the industry always puts pressure on parents to say, look, it's your job to monitor your children's television watching. Well, how many of you had your television watching monitored after about junior high? And how many of you came home at the end of the day and there was no adult there because your parent or parents were working and you could watch whatever you wanted to watch? Or you had your own television in your room, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The difference with the radio is, and this is what the law says, radio, quote, comes into your home uninvited, end quote. That because all you have to do is turn on a receiver, that radio is different from cable television. So some people said that when this case came down back in August with these two fellows at a station owned by Infinity, that this was sort of deregulated broadcasting taken to its extreme. How many of you are familiar with this show? And what happened back in August? What was the case? Here we have the Opie and Anthony show, and we have this fellow with the red shirt who's willing to speak up. What's your name? Andrew. I love your first name. Your parents made a wise choice. Andrew, so what happened? What happened was in St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is considered a pretty icon, venerable sort of place. Yeah, I would say having sex in St. Patrick's Cathedral could get you in trouble, particularly if you called a radio station while you were doing it, which is what they did. Hi, you want to give me a prize for being really out there? We'll show you what really out there is. We'll have sex in a vestibule at St. Patrick's Cathedral. How do you like that? Now, how do you think the marketing director, Samuel Adams, felt sitting in the control room at WNEW when this happened? Hey, we're going to have this big contest. Hey, we're going to throw all this beer. It's really cool marketing. Blah, blah, blah. And this couple was going at it over the telephone, and they broadcast it. The couple, by the way, got arrested for indecent exposure. These two guys lost their job, but do you think it hurt their stock? Of course not. Now they're celebrities. Now everybody knows who they are, and everybody who didn't put their hand up in the room just found out who they are. And my guess is just as Howard Stern wasn't able to sustain himself with NBC, maybe Opie and Anthony can't sustain themselves with Infinity, but there's somebody else out there that's going to say, look, that was great, that's cool, we can sell a lot of advertising, let's just not go quite that far. And some people argue that if you have a system set up where you're really depending on the judgment of certain people, and you let certain people have that kind of power, you could end up with something like this happening. The term that's used, by the way, for this category is what's called shock jocks. And the idea is that, and some people say this has to do with how our society has changed, that people just aren't shocked anymore. What shocks you? Is there anything that would personally shock you? Is there anything that you could see where you go, whoa, that's like really over the line? Some people say there's like nothing that's over the line anymore, that there is nothing left to talk about or to show, and so that term shock jock comes from the concept that because there's so much competition, because the media is itself so competitive, that what you end up with is a system where people are almost forced to do something outlandish just to break through all the clutter and get people's attention. What ended up happening as a result of this law was a tremendous amount of consolidation. So what you end up having from a managerial standpoint is you have fewer and fewer companies that have more control over more and more of the media. So we had a whole process of consolidation going on. Now, some of these consolidations, like Viacom and Infinity, have been successful. Vivendi, a French company which acquired Universal, it has not necessarily been successful, and you may have read recently the chairman of Vivendi, who had moved from France to New York City, was deposed by the board, and they're seeking a new direction for their company, and there's some speculation that Vivendi may actually sell Universal and get out of that business. And my guess is Universal is such a big company, there's only a few companies that might be able to take them on. AOL Time Warner, when it occurred, it was heralded as the ultimate merger within the deregulated post-1996 communications industry, and they've had some integration problems, and they've had some